I am Christopher Smith, and this is Naked Mormonism.
I pledge my life, all that I may have. I will strive to the utmost of my ability to be what you would want me to be.
It's time to find the truth.
And having set our hand to the plow, we will never look back until this work is finished.
Where is the church going?
I have faith that the Constitution will be saved as prophesied by Joseph Smith. But it will not be saved in Washington. It will be saved by enlightened members of this church.
The explicit tag is there for a reason, so if you get offended at what's said, it's not for you. But most importantly,
May you ponder the truths you've heard. May they help you become even better than you were.
skepticize everything.
Welcome to episode 71 of the Naked Mormonism Podcast, the Serial Mormon History Podcast. Today is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. My name is Bryce Blankenagel, and thank you for joining me. This episode is being released a little bit early for a couple of reasons, and what you're about to listen to, I'm going to just give a full disclaimer. We have on Tom and Cecil of Cognitive Dissonance podcast. If you are an avid listener of their show, you'll know that they can kind of get a little bit rash. So the explicit tag is there for lots of reasons today. Just want to give everybody a little heads up before we actually get into the episode. So in this episode, we do cover what I think is the worst presidential candidate in American history. And without further ado, here is the conversation with Tom and Cecil. Today, for some reason or another, we are joined by Tom and Cecil of Cognitive Dissonance. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Yay, it's us.
It's us.
I am a fan of us.
I gotta say,
one of us.
I really like your studio. It's very nice.
This is a great space.
It's a really nice space you got here.
It's really convenient.
Yeah.
You didn't have to travel at all for it.
Even have to travel. It's great.
Yeah, we are joined live from not Ground Gnome Studios, but Glory Hole Studios.
Glory Hole Studios.
Your commute here must be brutal. I gotta say, from Seattle to Chicago. I mean, I admire your dedication, but wow.
Yeah, 2 12-hour days of driving straight. Yeah,
That's brutal.
That's horrible.
12-hour days, huh?
Yeah, no, it's been fun. I actually like driving.
How did you get here? From the northern route, or did you go down another way? Or
I went across Montana. I don't know where I went. I just did whatever the little computer in my pocket told me to, because it knows all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Whenever the computer in my pocket starts talking to me, I get in a lot of trouble. Yeah. A lot. It doesn't say good things to me. I think they're good, but not everyone involved. Anyway, let's go on. That's a whole thing.
So I actually have you guys here for a very you have me here for a very special reason. I want to pose to you guys my arguments for who I think was the worst presidential candidate in American history.
Hillary Clinton.
That's a
Nailed
possible
it.
candidate.
Nailed it.
But I have some I have some evidence to disagree with you.
Okay.
And I think that you may find my case compelling by the end of this.
I was going to go with Walter Mondale. But okay.
Bob Dole thinks it's Bob Dole.
Joseph Smith, you guys are on the Naked Mormonism podcast right now. We got to talk Mormonism.
All right, let's do it.
Joseph Smith.
Who's Joseph Smith again?
He's the reason why I'm here today.
There's all these
that
Mormons
fucking
that listen to
butterfly
each other
effect
like,
shit.
oh, fuck
Hold
you.
on, is he the guy with the hat and then the special stones, or is that a different guy?
Yeah, that's him.
Or is that Brigham Young? Which one is that?
What is a Brigham?
Brigham Young was the dude that took him out to Utah.
Oh, okay.
So that nobody would bug them out there, and he could do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Oh, like marry a bunch of people?
Yeah,
I thought that he had to go all the
Joseph
way to
did that
Utah
too.
for that.
But he kind of, he ran into issues when he tried to do that.
Okay.
But many people.
But Joseph's the one with the stones. The
That's
seer
right.
stones.
Yeah.
And then
so
the golden
South
plates.
Park episode?
Yeah.
You seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Joseph Smith.
And all that's real. That's not doctored.
That's legit.
That's legit.
Every bit of that is well documented history.
And everybody in Mormonism believes that story.
Most of them don't know about it.
Well, it's harder for them to believe it then.
How do they not know about it?
Jinx!
Because
Years of doing this show, I've never done that.
Never really did that. That's the first time.
That's so funny.
there's got to be a first time for everything in the glory
We both
hole.
finished at the glory hole at the same time.
Never finished at the same
weird.
time.
That's weird. Normally we're waiting for somebody else to catch up. And the cameraman's like tapping his foot. He's like, come on already.
I always go, your turn, my turn. It's polite that way.
And I always race to the finish. First one done.
I'm breaking into these chips. Does anybody mind?
Get Cheeto dust on everything. So, as I said, I'm here to present the worst presidential candidate in American history. And not many people know this, but Joseph Smith actually ran for president in the 1844 election.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I bet they don't know 'cause he didn't
1844.
win.
Who did he run against? You going to get to that?
Ooh, that's actually a good question. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of that.
Now I'm going to look it up.
Let's find out right now.
It was whoever won.
That's usually how losing to the other guy works.
That's why it's candidate, not president.
Yeah, you wouldn't know because it's James Knox Polk.
Wait, there was a president named James Knox Polk?
He defeated Whig Henry Clay. There was a Whig party, evidently.
We'll get into the Whig versus Democrat. So okay, there's a whole lot to talk about with Joseph Smith. I've had to distill down years of research into a single essay that I am here to present you guys with. No matter what Joseph Smith touched, he turned it into a molasses flood of bullshit.
That's a citation needed reference.
Bam!
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
That is.
Actually, Citation Needed does have one listener. I know it for a fact. He had a ton of opportunities and resources given to him by rich Mormons, but without exception, he would suck the fountainhead dry and leave nothing but destruction and desolation in his wake.
It sounds bad when you say it.
Yeah, kind of sounds like Tom's ex-wife, actually.
Never sucked anything dry.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, God.
I don't know where to go with that.
We're going to ruin your show.
Yeah, your show. Yeah, basically people are going to be like, yeah, I remember liking that show. I remember when it was erudite.
It's a very serious show about Mormonism.
Yeah.
Now
All
it's
three
just-
listeners are like, fuck this.
I'm going to David Smalley.
Unsubscribe. I should have worn my fourth listener shirt.
And, let me behind the paywall.
I offer a few exhibits to make my case.
All right.
Joseph Smith had four main theaters of operation. He had New York, Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois. And I can provide sources for everything that we discussed today, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to skip over the high points. If anyone wants to call me out on these, nakedmormonism@gmail.com. Exhibit A for why Joseph Smith was the worst presidential candidate. He was a terrible businessman and had no concept of economics.
Wait, hold on.
Wait,
Hold
being
on
a terrible
second.
businessman clearly
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
that we have that.
Yeah, we got that right
in,
now.
in the winner.
The winner.
Like the winner presidential candidate.
I think he's making a parallel here, Tom.
Just
We'll hear you out.
let me make my case.
We'll hear you out. We'll hear you out.
Joseph Smith grabs pussies. I'm just saying.
Oh my God. All of
God.
the pussies.
Yeah.
Every one of them that approaches
He's using
him.
them like finger puppets. You know what I mean?
His earliest business ventures were digging for buried treasure,
Okay.
which he was sued for at the age of 20 years old because he wasn't producing any results. Then he comes into the Book of Mormon. He paid for the publication of it by swindling Martin Harris. Dum dum dum. No, remember Martin Harris?
I don't know.
No, what's a Martin Harris?
So Martin Harris was the rich farmer guy that Joseph said, "Hey, you can fund
okay.
my book,
Yeah,
right?"
Yeah.
So Martin Harris had to sell his farm in order to pay for the publication of the Book of Mormon because they weren't selling enough of the copies to make their money
Jesus
back.
Christ.
But at the same time that they were printing it, Joseph got a revelation that somebody in Canada wanted to buy the copyright. So he sent some missionaries up to Canada to sell the copyright out from under Martin Harris for
To
$8,000. Doesn't know.
Jesus.
It was a divine revelation from God. The missionaries got there and like, where are we supposed to go? And everybody's like, we don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
wait, just
Nobody's buying copyrights around here.
To Canada in general? Like, it's like
They're up there shouting, hello!
they cross the border like,
Want to buy this? Hey,
we should have gotten an address. Canada's big.
Then after that, he went to Ohio, where he proceeded to cornhole Edward Partridge,
Hey, now.
Newell K. Whitney, and a number of small handful of investors out of tens of thousands of dollars, while at the same time running the church into $60,000 of debt.
What in 1840 whatever time? What is $60,000?
That's about $1.3 million of today.
Okay, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, and Joseph wasn't smart enough to incorporate or create a church at this, so it was all in his own name.
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Nicely done. Nicely done, sir.
That was amazing.
You can use that.
I'm just going to take that snippet.
Just call Canada. They'll pay for it. It's like, hello, Canada.
Hi.
I have a...
This is going to be a long episode.
Yeah. You invited us on.
I thought it was 1-800.
So he ran the church himself into all of this debt in order to build a temple that they used for about a year's time before they were chased out of Ohio because they were defaulting on payments.
Jesus.
Imagine that. And then they were chased to Missouri, and this is where they
I like it
land.
when you default on a payment, they chase you out.
Back then.
But they were not fucking around.
He had a famous midnight flight where him and Sidney Rigdon were like, we're the fuck out of here. We just got sued for $1,000 and we were way behind on everything else. In the middle of the night, they left in January.
What?
From Ohio to Missouri.
Let me ask you a question. How many people that are Mormons know that he fled his debtors or his debt? Is that what I would say? No, they're a debtor.
He's a debtor.
He's a debtor.
What would be the lien holders or whatever? How do many people know that he like fled and was defaulting on all this money?
No. And I've talked to a few people who work for the CES, which is the church educational system, and they're usually fairly well trained in apologetics. And when I claimed that they built the Kirtland Temple on nothing but credit on an empty paper bag, basically, they're like, oh, well, the temple, they paid for that separately, but it was everything else, all the other church affairs that they were running into debt for. So people who are educated in Mormon history know that Joseph never paid his debts. He was no Lannister. But most Mormons...
But he did fuck his sister, so...
Yes.
Oh.
Possibly.
Yeah.
We'll get into it, okay?
So will he.
But yeah, most Mormons never get into this. They never know any of this because it takes so much work to find this. This is why I do it full time, because you have to dig so fucking deep to find all of this. So then he moves on to Missouri, where the Mormons proceeded to solve their perpetual debt by raiding and pillaging the local non-Mormon settlements.
What?
Which raised
violently raided them?
Yeah, which raised the ire of the Missouri militia, which was sent out, and they actually got in a few scrapes with the militia, which resulted in almost purely Mormon deaths.
Whoa!
There was a Missouri Mormon War of 1838 in America. That was a thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, never heard that in history class, right?
They're basically pirates. They were land pirates. They were Mormon land pirates. Yar, we've got some bad ideas and we're all broke.
Yar.
So the Mormon towns far west and Diamond ended up surrounded by the Missouri militia. Joseph and his cronies, sure, that's a good word, were taken to jail, Liberty Jail.
Liberty Jail is the most ironic name for a jail ever. And Liberty Jail? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Really? Liberty Jail. Somebody's like, fuck you. That's what we're calling it.
This is Warden Set You Free.
From which he escaped.
Full motherfucking circle.
But while he was staying there, he was sending letters to and from these land speculators in Illinois and Iowa who owned tens of thousands of acres and decided...
Lakers?
Did I say
basketball
Lakers?
players?
They're from LA. It's different.
Tens of thousands.
So many of these tall black guys. What do I do with them all?
Missouri was a slave state.
Make them work.
I've got tens of thousands. They're so tall, I have big peaches instead of cotton.
It wasn't Georgia.
Nothing grows in Missouri.
Except weed. So he agreed to buy the land basically sight unseen during his time when he was staying in prison. And these land speculators are like, this guy's in prison. The Mormons are super desperate and they've been removed from Missouri with the governor's Mormon Extermination Act. Sure, we'll make a lot of money off of them. So he got out of jail in early 1839 and they moved to Kirtland and Illinois. And when the Mormons couldn't pay their bills in Illinois and Iowa. When the Mormons couldn't pay their bill in Illinois and Iowa, they had no problem making their own counterfeit and a bogus money to pay for it. Counterfeit is paper, bogus is coin.
Really? I learned something very exciting right now.
I didn't know that either.
There was one historian that presented at this conference I was just attending in Nauvoo who said that the Mormons printed roughly $350,000 of fake money. Anyone had...
In 18 whatever the fuck times? That's got to be...
You want to guess?
I do. $1.9 billion.
It's $1 trillion.
It's pretty close. That's just over $9 million.
That's not close to a
That's
trillion.
not close to a trillion.
That's not close.
I was way off too.
Zeros don't mean anything
Yeah.
once you get into the millions.
It's closer to zero than a trillion. By a lot.
That sounds exhausting to print all that money.
It does.
I'm too lazy to counterfeit that much money. I'd be like, oh, God, I don't even care anymore.
I want to counterfeit one check for $9 million. That's what I want to do.
I try to pass around this $9 million bill. Like, I don't know, $9 million. Do you have change for $9 million?
I have a $9 million coin. It's bogus.
Like my religion.
They had different grades of coinage that they printed. They realized like the first batches were really shitty, and then the second batches were actually pretty good, and then the third batches, I think they called them land office bogus, because even the land office couldn't tell that it was counterfeit money. And each of the the degrees of bogus would sell for different dollar amounts.
So people knew it was bullshit. Otherwise, they wouldn't have valued them differently.
Exactly. Well,
what?
Well, all of the Mormons knew that the Mormons had no money, but they were throwing around gobs of money. It had to come from somewhere. It came from their own presses. They were making their own shit.
Well,
this is one small aspect.
If you're going to make up your own God, you may as well make up your own money. I mean, it's like a fucking small step there.
But the thing is, they moved into Illinois on debt alone, and their chief export was more debt and land speculation. So when they moved to Illinois, it was a swampland with 2 buildings. And the Mormons, there were about 10,000 Mormons who were moving from Missouri to Illinois at this time. Jesus. So they had to build a town and build all the infrastructure to create a town. And they did so all on credit. But there weren't any factories. There weren't any mills. There weren't any major farming operations. They didn't have any major exports to balance the deficit. So they were just going further and further.
Who thinks this is a good risk?
Everybody. And when nobody would loan them money, they'd print money and just use that inside their own economy. They created their own fake economy.
That's amazing.
And Joseph even tried to file for bankruptcy in 1842, but the state of Illinois denied him bankruptcy status.
Wow.
Because he had enough fake money to pay his fake debts?
I guess. I don't know the details of it.
He should have called Peter Francis Geraci. He'd have gotten out of that shit.
He doesn't know who Peter Francis
I know.
Is that Trump's lawyer?
No, it's a local.
It's a local bankruptcy lawyer who puts his ads on TV.
everywhere.
So
I
the
should have seen the billboard.
Chicago people that killed
dying.
with
That's
Chicago
gonna
people.
kill Chicago. Okay.
Killed with Chicago people.
So
Good joke.
One main
If you don't know, it's a good joke. Trust me on this.
it's not highbrow. It's just
I'm just
really
saying to get your
small
info
brow.
tapes.
You get your info tapes. That old car is worth money.
No book sales for all my Utah. Out there. Okay. One main difference between Joseph Smith and Donald Trump. Trump was born into a family with $300 million to fuck around with.
Sure.
Joseph had nothing.
Okay.
Until he made it himself.
Until he made it himself.
Self-made man.
His dad taught him how to do it, too.
His own
Did they
money.
both have steak companies?
How many universities?
How many?
A ton.
How many jet
Joseph
airlines?
made a number of universities
Did he
or
have
schooling.
Trump jets? Joseph jets? It's like a kite or something. I don't even know.
Jet-powered horses
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something. So that sets the economic scene.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Exhibit B for why Joseph was the worst presidential candidate in American history was military acumen.
Oh.
In Jackson's democracy, lawyers were useful, but armies were how you really got shit done. And Joseph knew that. Beginning in Missouri, Joe organized the Danites and the Army of Israel, who all enforced the Mormon will through military force, even getting in some brief armed conflicts with the Missouri militia. We talked about that briefly before.
Well, they lost badly.
Badly, yeah.
Good.
There was what was known as the Hans Mill Massacre, and it just slaughtered like 20 Mormons. So in the grand scheme of things, it's
So how many people is that? Like, what's the exchange rate on?
They were like
Mormons. to
They're all
people?
bogus people.
Were they land office bogus or like
turned out of a printing
we
press.
can't even tell the difference between this Mormon and a person. It's such a close.
They were like 4/5, not 3/5. No. So he was smart enough when they created Nauvoo to write into the Nauvoo Legion a line item that Nauvoo could organize its own military force that was not subject to control by the governor, like all other state militias were. So this was weird because in this time and age, no other city had their own militia. It was just Nauvoo that wrote this into the charter. But what they did is they basically copied and pasted or counterfeited the Springfield charter, and the Springfield, Illinois offices were like, oh, that looks just like ours. Fucking rubber stamp, send it through. Nauvoo's a city now. And they're like, yeah, we got that military provision written in there, so we're all set.
Nabu's a city, so is Endor. Dagobah system right next door.
Every time he says Nauvoo, it's a Star Wars
It is.
thing.
It's
for
a
me.
Star Wars thing.
I just think of the frog people, like you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, the Gungans.
The onions, yeah.
Anyone seeing a picture of Orrin Porter Rockwell, you can pull it up. That is the Mormon Ewok.
Yeah. He got a big high beard. It starts like right under his eyes.
Yeah, the big woolly motherfucker. Yeah, he's more Wookiee than Ewok, but they're kind of like cousins, kind of the same looking thing.
I gotta do that because I get the Wookiee thing going on.
Does it go all the way to your eyes?
It doesn't go to my eyes, but it goes up pretty high. It goes up pretty high. It's not an insubstantial way at my cheek. Let me say that.
Cecil is still evolving, everybody.
I'm a Mormon. Leave me alone.
You not
don't
with that
shave your
beard.
eyebrows, you shave to create.
Yeah, I
eyebrow,
just
like
create them.
around.
Yeah.
So the Nauvoo Legion and the Nauvoo Police Force were created, and they became Joe's mafia arm, basically. And then there were the Whistling Whittlers, which were a group of 15 to 25-year-old men who would spend their days placed in strategic places around Nauvoo, whittling sticks with Bowie knives and whistling ominously.
Just be a shame if something were to happen to your whittling or something. Is that what they're doing, basically? Like,
What are they're intimidating both of the other people in Nauvoo. Like the whole, oh my God, the population of Nauvoo is afraid. They are the population of Nauvoo.
In 1844, Nauvoo was the second largest city in Illinois.
It's still not a big city in 1840. Was it really? I'm fucking around.
Yeah. It was. Chicago was the only bigger city in Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge.
And nobody has any idea that. No, I've lived in Illinois my whole life. I've driven up and down the state.
It's by the Mississippi, so you would have never seen
I've
it.
never heard of it.
You've never seen it.
I've never done business anywhere near it. I've been all over the state for work. No one's ever been like,
it's because there's nothing there.
I got a
today.
deal in Nauvoo.
It's an old city that was.
Yeah, what's the population now? I'm really curious.
Maybe a few thousand. It's just a tourist town that pretty much owned by the Mormon Church. And they've just pumped millions of dollars into these old buildings that the Mormons originally built that they've restored and turned into museum pieces, staffed with missionaries, so you can go and tour all of these places. Oh. And they tell you stories. And
1,100
their testimony.
is the population.
Okay, that
1,100.
Yeah, it's pretty small. Lots of farming country out there. So anyway, these Whistling Whittlers, anytime somebody would come into town, they would soon find themselves surrounded by these Whistling Whittlers who had Bowie knives and spears. And they were quick to make like a tree and get the fuck out of town.
I bet.
Jeez.
So
spears
and magic helmets.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where you really get scared. Is the magic helmet.
So
These are not the Mormons you're looking for.
I keep telling her I have a magic helmet.
I keep telling her I have a spear. She's still not afraid.
Ain't nothing magic
You
about
keep
that.
whittling.
Yeah.
Somebody already whittled it right off.
It's more like a
It's
fencing
magic.
This poor man's show.
It's got the diameter of a fencing sword. But the Nauvoo Legion numbered about 3,000 to 4,000 men at its strongest in 1844, which was bigger than any state militia and rivaled the size of the entirety of the American armed forces.
What?
So people were very intimidated by the Mormons. Imagine some Islamic sect coming in and camping out in Kansas or something and making a small commune where they raise up a militia of 3,000 to 4,000 fighting men. How long would it take for people to react to that?
Oh, we'd bomb that immediately.
Fucking immediately. Our own soil, we would be like, leave a crater.
Right.
We don't even want to see blood. Leave nothing but a glass where there used to be dirt.
More than 4 Muslims. It's like one family.
Oh my God. And of course, Joseph spared no occasion to march these people through the streets, these in full battle regalia with army, the full armed. He would ride around on his horse with his sword drawn, making speeches about how the Mormon kingdom is going to roll forth and consume all of the nations and rule under the one mighty God. He was establishing a theocracy essentially.
Huh.
And he had a sizable militia that was ready to fight.
So all you're saying is Trump needs a horse and a sword, is what you're saying.
What horse could carry him?
That's true.
What horse?
That's fair.
Would not immediately be
one of those
swayed,
Budweiser
broken-
horses. Those the big clumpy feet.
It'd have to be a Cadillac horse.
Right? Yeah. They have to reinforce the suspension in fucking the Air Force One to put him in the thing.
This is the Trump horse. He's a good horse.
Pretty much the best
horse.
He one time raced Secretariat, killed it.
Literally killed Secretariat.
He won all the Preakness.
They weren't even alive at the same time.
Whatever.
I don't care about that.
Shut up, fake
Facts don't matter.
news.
Fake news. So there was a paper published by Thomas Sharp, and this would come in hand later. It was called the Warsaw Signal, and he was an anti-Mormon. He realized when Joseph was parading these thousands of soldiers through the streets that there was a fucking problem here.
Yeah. No, an issue.
That's when he kind of began his crusade against the Mormons, and his printing press office still stands in Warsaw, Illinois. So there's still like the Warsaw paper is there, and they have like a fake printing press in the
And you
basement
said this
still.
is happening in 1844?
Yeah.
So
Well,
this is the year that he's running for president?
he was establishing his theocracy all the way from 40 to 44.
Okay.
His presidential run was in 44.
Okay, all right.
So this is in 44, things really got
I see.
absolutely insane.
Okay.
But at this time, Joseph Smith, every letter, all of his people called him Lieutenant General, which, for context, that was an office only previously held by Lieutenant General George Washington.
Oh my gosh.
Joseph never had any military training. He just was Lieutenant General because he said he was. And everybody's like, yeah, you're the prophet. Cool. Good. Yeah. I don't want to be on your bad side. I disappeared.
Bravo.
Did some wounded soldier offer to give him a Purple Heart at any point? Was
Oh
there-
my God.
Jesus Christ. Wouldn't surprise me. But of course, Exhibit C is Joseph knew the power of the press and propaganda. And he was, it was that was kind of his chief operating mechanism to enforce his will before invoking the power of the militia. It began with the Book of Mormon in 1830, but then he put out his revelations in the Evening and Morning Star in Curland. That was the first general publication. Then those were compiled into the Doctrine and Covenants, which Mormons still carry around with them today. I told you about those a little earlier.
Yeah, the Doctrine.
And then when they were in Missouri, he had the Elder's Journal. And then in Nauvoo, they had the Times and Seasons, the Nauvoo Neighbor, and briefly the Wasp.
These people were prolific
Jesus
publishers. That's all I'm
Christ.
saying.
He didn't rely on just Twitter.
Yeah, no.
He didn't fuck around. Interesting side note, the Wasp was actually run by his little brother, who we call Crazy Willie because he was a crazy bastard, who also ran the town brothel.
Oh. You can get stung at that.
I know,
There's so
right?
much
Yeah.
about Mormons.
Different kind of wasp.
Mormons were partiers back in the day. Maybe not now. Now, Exhibit D. The one thing that Mormons are most known for is polygamy. Which was only one...
the good stuff. This is the good stuff.
But it was actually only one small aspect of everything fucked up that was going on. Beginning in Kirtland, Joe and his wife Emma would take teenage women into their home and give them a place to live and teach them homemaking skills.
Where were they living before that?
A lot of them were orphans, actually.
Oh, they were?
Yeah, which made it so they didn't have parents to go tell their stories to. So this was a common practice in 19th century America. And the first woman that we know of was named Fanny Alger or Fanny Alger. She was 19 years old. In 1836, Emma caught her and Joseph out in the barn behind the house. But from then on in Nauvoo, they would make a pattern out of this. They would take...
Hang on, honey, I'm about to have a revelation.
Oh, just wait.
It turns out
she's grabbing me by my seer stones.
They would just take in these women and they would learn homemaking skills, so on and so forth. And Joseph would pay them with the big D.
Homemaking skills. All right.
It kind of sounds like the Miss America pageant, right?
He's just walking through the dressing room, grabbing pussies.
So then comes the revelation. Finally, Joseph gave this revelation in 1843, and it says explicitly that Emma, you should cleave unto none other than your husband. Emma was Joseph's wife. So he said, you can't have any spiritual husbands, but I can have spiritual wives. But he only gave this revelation after he made a deal with his wife that she can have a spiritual husband if she approves of him taking two sisters, the Partridges, Eliza and Emily Partridge.
How many pear trees go with those?
No, this is the Partridge family. It's different.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. There you go.
He had a lot of birds in his tree. He made this deal with her and married these two sisters who
With
were
5 golden rings.
He didn't give them dowries. Jesus, are you
They
kidding
were
me?
bogus gold rings.
Stamped out of tin.
Exactly.
So these sisters were 22 and 19 respectively, and Joseph was 38 at the time. Offer some context. Not
creepy.
Not that far out, but his youngest wife was 14, which was really fucking creepy. So Joseph made this deal with his wife. You can have a spiritual husband if I can take these two sisters. She agreed on that. He married the two sisters. He reneged on the agreement and gave this revelation saying, you actually can't have a spiritual husband. I'm your only husband. And, I still get to marry these sisters.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
It's convenient when everything you want turns out to be a revelation from God, right?
It's also the reneging on the deals reminds me of like when you hire a drywaller to come to your casino or whatever.
Right?
And then you just don't pay him. It's similar.
It's not.
It's somebody's getting fucked. That's for sure.
Well, no, wait a minute. So now he's up to 3 wives?
Oh,
3 and 3
wives.
3 and 3, right?
I'm saying, how many babies at this point? How many baby mamas?
Luckily, he had a guy named John C. Bennett who was a practiced obstetrician, and he would take care of any of the baby problems that would arise. So Joseph,
how do Mormons feel about abortion? Are they against it?
Very against it. Very conservative about it.
All right.
Yeah,
Just curious.
And they also hate John Bennett.
Okay.
But Joseph doesn't have very many sons and daughters. But he had. Most historians estimate conservatively between 30 and 40 wives at the time he died.
So he had a lot of little graves, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Or I mean, they just flushed them in the chamber pot.
I understand.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Take
There's
care of it
no
before it was a real
sentimentality there.
problem.
Yeah, it's not an issue.
Some historians have actually estimated as high as 85 wives, but most of those estimates are
wives.
way
It's
high on the
Genghis Khan, for Christ's sake.
But
Jesus.
That's only the wives he married.
How do you keep subdividing your income like that? Jesus Christ. Wait a minute. They all get 58%.
Why do you think he had to print so much counterfeit money? So this is just the wives he married. That doesn't say anything about the wives, the women he was having sex with. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Who? There's no way to tell.
There's literally no other reason to create your own religion.
But some of these women were kind of like it seems anyway, like some of them were part of the underground world that existed in Mormonism. Here's a quote from a guy named Joseph Jackson. He published his expose on Mormonism in August of 1844. This was after Joseph's presidential campaign was essentially at an end. Joseph Jackson said, quote, he, meaning Joseph, spoke of his spiritual wives particularly and called them great captains in service to carry his design, and remarked that through them he could get any stranger's money. So he would commission some of his wives to get the stranger's money. You want to hear how it happened?
I do.
Yeah.
Seaman.
I asked him how I asked him how he would work the matter, to which he replied that he had only to tell certain of his spiritual wives that such a man had been in the Missouri War, and that he should be put out of the way, and his property and money consecrated to the use of the church. Put out of the way was removed from society. And his money and property consecrated to the church means we take it in and absorb it into the bishop's storehouse and use it how we see fit.
So
Then
they just kicked that fucker out of town?
Then said he, it is damned easy for them to get on his good graces and to mix a white powder with his victuals and put him out of the way.
And kill him. Just kill that fucking dude.
And
Take
take
his shit.
People think this guy was like a holy person?
This gets so much deeper. I have another couple quotes from this same expose. And this guy, Joseph Jackson, when he realized what the Mormons were doing, he went to Nauvoo and somebody attempted to assassinate him because he was an outsider. They shot at him, but the bullet missed. But because it's ye olde pistols, it was enough that he got powder burn on his face and the guy ran away and they couldn't catch him. And he thought that Joseph Smith told that guy to kill Joseph Jackson. So Joseph Jackson then went on an expose of infiltrating the Mormons, getting on Joe's good graces, and learning everything that he could about the Mormons, and recorded everything in his journals, and then published it all in the Warsaw Signal. That guy Thomas Sharp, who realized when all the militias are parading around, the Mormons are a fucking problem. Joseph Jackson was like, this is how much of a problem the Mormons are. Here are my journals. So here's another quote.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
It's fascinating. It's so crazy. I love how crazy this is.
Joseph Jackson goes on to wonderfully describe the character of Joseph Smith after getting to know him fairly well, and see if this malignant narcissistic personality tends to ring any bells. Quote, I was utterly astonished to see this man concoct the most hellish plans for murder and revenge, and yet with pertinacity insist that it was right in the sight of God. And here lay the whole secret of Joe Smith's success. He had a singularly unmeaning countenance that was no index of his real character. Meaning he could do anything he want and tell you, oh, this is just what I'm doing, so fucking deal with it. He had so long practiced duplicity that there was scarcely a compunctious feeling left in his bosom, and he had no scruples in regards to the means he should employ when he had an end to attain. Hence it was that he had no hesitancy in prostituting everything sacred for the purpose of lust, cupidity, revenge, or power. End quote.
Okay, so when you write it like that, it sounds
real bad.
He sounds like a real bastard, right?
Man.
This guy probably just had it out for Joseph Smith, though. I mean, come on.
He did, and we have to take that into account.
Yeah.
So we have to corroborate things that he puts in his journal with other historical entries.
Sure, yeah.
Now,
makes
granted,
sense,
there are some problems with Joseph Jackson's account, and the historicity of this is always under investigation, but there's a lot of things in his journal entries that are corroborated by other accounts.
The people that were at the conference that you were at, does anybody cover this stuff?
Most of the people were using this as a source.
Wow.
Because I was at the John Whitmer History Conference, where it's open to all Mormons, and it's a secular conference. It's an academic secular conference, and this was published, so people have to deal with it as academics. There are Mormon history conferences where they never talk about this because they're putting forward apologetics. They don't want to talk about these salacious aspects of Mormon history. They find ways to apologize it away. There is another thing that Jackson includes, and I'm very interested to see what you guys think about this, because had I not read it myself, I would not be able to believe that this would actually exist. But they just keep Trump in mind, of course. Joseph hatched a plan. There was a Mormon that was living in Nauvoo named Brown who had designed on paper a battery and steam-powered submarine. And Joe had a plan to implement this submarine. Now, keep in mind, this was at a time that the British naval forces ruled the world, right? So submarines could effectively destroy the British Navy.
Sure.
Quote, his real object, as he disclosed it to me, was this. He would first run for president and thus be able to prove to the Emperor of Russia his strength in the Union. He would then send G.A. Adams, Orson Hyde, and Brown to Russia, and after the utility of the invention, the submarine, had been fairly proved to the Emperor, Joe's proposition to him was to be submitted, which was to form a league for the overthrow of the powers that be.
I feel sad and weird.
What about his emails, though?
Was he using his own carrier pigeons? Now, of course, Jackson says, now this seems too ridiculous for any man to imagine possible. Nevertheless, no one acquainted with the excessive vanity of Joe Smith will doubt, but that he in reality believed that he could form even so preposterous a union. End quote. So Joseph Smith
his
wanted to collude
narcissism
with
was
the
enough to float the plan.
Yeah.
Apparently. Pun fully intended. Yeah. And finally, the main reason why Joseph Smith takes the first prize as the worst presidential candidate in American history, and I leave this for you to judge for yourself. This is the main point we've been driving at this whole time, which puts him way above Trump as the worst. In 1844, Joseph Smith blew up a Nauvoo printing press known as the Nauvoo Expositor when they published an expose on the Mormons. Joseph was thrown in jail for high treason, where he was promptly and rightfully assassinated by a mob. This was in June of 1844, right in the middle of his presidential candidacy, and a dead theocrat undisputedly makes for the worst presidential candidate in American history.
He never made it to Utah?
No. That was Brigham Young that took the Mormons out to Utah.
No shit.
Yeah. He did.
So he got killed in Nauvoo?
Yeah. Well, Carthage, actually, which is about 15 miles south of Melbourne. Right.
That's,
Carthage. How
that's a
relevant is
shitty
that?
place to die, Carthage. It turns out.
And then they raised the city.
Yeah,
It's like,
salted the earth.
shit,
oh,
man.
gosh.
So
I didn't realize that's where he died. I thought he had brought the church with him on his back to some other faraway land. No, that was Brigham Young.
there was actually a schism crisis after his death. And
That's the worst kind of crisis.
a presidential crisis might be worse. So Brigham Young took about half the Mormons with him out to Utah. Brigham Young didn't even know where he was going when they first left. He sent a letter to somebody saying, we'll meet you in California. They wanted to go to Texas. They wanted to go to Oregon. At one point, Joseph established what was known as the Council of 50, which was the governing body set to govern over the Mormon kingdom after they had overthrown the government. And at one point, Joseph Smith petitioned the United States government for 100,000 armed soldiers to march to Oregon to liberate it from the Native Americans. What he planned to do after that, who knows? But I think Joseph Jackson's account of him wanting to make a league with Russia may have something to do with that. That being said, from New York to Illinois, everything that Joseph Smith touched completely fell to chaos and ruin. He fucked everything that moved in one way or another. And after his death, this was when the schism crisis happened. Brigham Young took about 50% of the Mormon population out to Utah. That was about 12 to 15,000 people. The estimates are widely varied. They were forcefully driven out of Illinois beginning in 1846, and they finally arrived in the Utah Basin in July of 1847. And when I say forcefully, I mean forcefully. They were driven out by militias.
Huh.
And after Brigham took the majority of them out there with him, the mob violence fell away.
What a lawless, shitty place this country used to be.
Right? No kidding.
Jesus Christ.
What a
Yeah.
lawless, like every fucking country, every fucking goddamn town is Deadwood. You know? It's like there's a fucking Al Swearingen everywhere.
Right?
Yeah.
Everywhere.
That's Jackson's democracy. Lynch laws, mob rule, you just do whatever the fuck you want as long as it works. If there's a group of people that you don't like in town, you chase them the fuck out. That's how America used to work.
Jesus.
That's where we came from. Does it not make sense
so
why we
weird
do
they're
some of the
saying
things we
used to
do?
Yeah, used to.
Exactly. And then you create...
So I don't know. I got to say that is very compelling.
It is.
However,
Yeah.
Trump still the worst candidate in U.S. history for two reasons. The first is that he won.
Yeah.
And the second is
Doesn't that make him...
at least Joseph Smith had the good grace to die.
Yeah.
But the worst candidate isn't successful in getting elected, though.
But if he's that bad and then he got elected.
No, I'll give you Trump is the worst president.
I find his candidacy more terrifying for its effectiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is a false data set, because had Joseph been able to
You're a
chase...
false data set. Anything of that.
That's an ad hominem attack.
Bryce Black and Flag all flies, smacking, backing.
What if Joseph got elected?
Broken ankles.
Bacon and egos or whatever. All right.
If Joseph won, who knows what would... Maybe he would be the worst president in American history.
But I like him as a candidate because he died.
Well, the good thing is that if he were elected today, he'd be a better president.
I know, right?
Then we might just be living in Mormon land
I
today.
will say sometimes I think that the reason why Trump tweets the things he does is he has seer stones. You know what I mean? Like, I think he just reads these off of something else and just tweets out this nonsense like kafefe.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not a real word.
Right. That's the angel macaroni came down and was like...
Yeah, that's his conduit to the great, lizard alien overlords,
right?
That are actually controlling his body.
Despite all the negative press.
So what do you think, Cecil? Joseph Smith, worst presidential candidate ever?
I gotta say, I'm just, I don't know that I can accurately say worst ever, because I didn't even know who the president was in 1944. So I have a very small subsect of people I knew who were presidential candidates as I grew up, and the few famous ones throughout history. But pretty fucking bad. I will say that. Pretty fucking terrible. And it's funny too, because he sounds like just like a mob boss. That's what he sounds like.
You have no fucking idea.
He sounds like a mob boss, and it's like, and from what you said, that's pretty common. That was common back then. So he just happened to have some weird stones that told him what was what, and a bunch of people still believe it.
Yeah, some big ass stones is what he had to do all this.
People still believe it.
The church claims they have 15 million members worldwide.
Jeez. Is that more than Scientology?
Oh, yeah.
Far and away.
Way bigger. Yeah.
Way bigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're much better at the PR-friendly version. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Salt Lake City, but in spite of all of the homeless people, it's fucking spick-span, clean, beautiful city. The buildings are amazing. The skyscrapers, the architecture is really impressive. The church has dumped tons of money to making an oasis in the desert. And that is a perfect microcosm of everything about their history.
Yeah.
They ignore this salacious, evil shit that Joseph Smith was doing.
It's all scrubbed. It's all scrubbed.
And they spend a lot of time. They've had 180 years of Mormon apologists scrubbing their history and trying to sell.
180 years?
Yeah, Joseph Smith brought the Book of Mormon together or published it in 1830. So that's essentially when Mormonism started.
Okay.
So it's been over 180 years that Mormon apologists have been saying, let's just ignore that part. The seer stones, we're not going to talk about that. And saying, Mormons are really good people. And you just read this book. It says Jesus Christ in it a lot. That'll give you the nice Bernie Feely goods inside. So believe in our church. And Scientologists have had 50 years of a wacky history that descended from a well-known fiction writer.
Yeah, you're right. They're still too young.
Yeah, exactly. Give them another, 120 years. Maybe we'll have the scientist or Scientologist apologist debating a Mormon apologist.
I'm with Tom though earlier when you said that it doesn't have the mystique of the ancient. Sort of, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that mystique to it. Mm-hmm. It just sounds like such bullshit.
Right.
Like, it sounds like you're like, the dude put what in his hat and he said what now? Like, he did a what? That's fucking stupid. Like, I can't imagine somebody hearing the story about putting shit in a hat and then being like, no, that totally happened.
And Joseph claimed that the plates that he was translating to make the Book of Mormon, the golden plates that he lost, that an angel took away, but then somebody else said that they were buried in a hill and they went and saw that there were wagon loads of these golden plates. Doesn't matter. He said they were written in Reformed Egyptian.
Yeah.
It's not even a thing.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
But what was a thing in his time was the Rosetta Stone discovery. That was in 1805. And at the time, there were scholars and historians and archaeologists poring over the Rosetta Stone, trying to translate Egyptian to Greek to ancient Hebrew, trying to decipher what was on this Rosetta Stone. So it was making headlines. Joseph Smith read a newspaper, Egyptian manuscript, possibly deciphered. This guy, Francis Champollion, that was a little ahead of his time, is having a debate with this other archaeologist about it. Egyptian. I like that. Let's call it Reformed Egyptian. This is upgraded Egyptian.
Reformed Egyptian.
Like, he was a synthesizer of ideas. He would take something, run with it, tweak it slightly, and then make it as best as he possibly could.
But amazingly, people believe it now.
Yeah.
I get it then, but now.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the thing, the writing is objectively bad.
Yeah.
In the Book of Mormon. The writing is
absolutely.
bad. You can't evaluate the writing in the Bible as much because, it's been translated. The Book of Mormon, the writing is terrible.
Yeah,
it's literally
English.
terrible.
It was written in English.
It's written poorly. It's very bad writing. It's obviously untrue shit. Like, it's just, like, you just read it, you're like, no, that's some silly. And it's racist as hell. It didn't happen. Like, it just so obviously didn't happen. And then when you add in the history factor that you're talking about, you're like, well, this is not a believable character. Like, none of it. And so who the fuck in 2017 is like, that seems plausible.
And then if you do any kind of searching whatsoever on the guy, you're just like, wow, he's a super duper scumbag? That sucks. That's the guy who made everything. Do they have like statues of this guy?
Yeah, everywhere. In Illinois. In Carthage, in front of the jailhouse he was shot in that the church owns.
I'm going
Was
to
it
see
Liberty
that. I'm getting a
Jailhouse?
selfie made with. I'm getting a selfie right there.
No,
I'm
but
gonna
they
get a
own
selfie.
Liberty Jail too. They built a vault around the Liberty Jail.
I love Liberty Jail. It's my favorite place. That's my... Oh, welcome to the divorce wedding hall. What? The fuck? What?
Yeah. So that's Joseph Smith.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's great. Terrible guy.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work to try and figure out who this guy really was. And no matter how many times you try and analyze him, no matter how many angles you try and incorporate, you just learn about new shit all the time. And every time I read an account like Joseph Jackson's, I'm just like, Joseph did what? He convinced his wives to poison guys so he could steal their money? Holy shit. That's stuff that I didn't know until this last
That must have had a
weekend.
dick of solid gold.
That's like some H.H.
must have
Holmes
been.
shit.
Right?
Like in
Guy-
Chicago
yeah.
where they're just like killing people and stuff. Just like, I mean, just wantonly killing people like that is horrifying.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And if they really didn't like you, so when Joseph Smith realized that Joseph Jackson was on an expose, he created a couple of plots to try and get Jackson killed. One of those was he tried to get the Mormons to invite Jackson out on a hunting trip. They would shoot him out on the hunting trip. Then the Mormons would come running back into town crying, Missouri persecution! He was shot by the mob! Which Joseph would get up on the stand.
Yeah.
We lost another one to the Missourians! I mean,
It was dangerous.
It's brilliant.
It was dangerous to cross the Mississippi back then.
No
huh?
kidding. It was.
Why didn't you say like, wow, we Dick Cheney'd him? Sorry.
Somebody threw the bird too
Cheney
close
lives.
to his face. Shot him in the face.
And it's interesting how
His face.
I know.
His face.
It's like that's his looking parts. And he threw the bird at his
If
face.
you survive that, like, how do you not turn to your buddy and be like, you shot me in the face?
Could you imagine?
If you shot me in the face, I would be pretty
Here's
fucking
the thing.
pissed, man.
Here's the thing, though. If you're Dick Cheney's friend, you deserve to be shot.
If you're Dick Cheney's friend, you can't even be surprised that Dick Cheney shot you in the face. Like,
I don't have oil in my body. Why'd you shoot me?
He's looking for bubbling crude. That's awesome.
I thought he was a weapon of mass destruction. I invaded.
Fun fact, the Mormons did try and assassinate a governor of Missouri. Governor Boggs, he signed the Mormon extermination order, which chased them out of Missouri when Joseph was in jail.
Oh, Trail of Tears.
And they shot him in the face, and he almost died, but he made a recovery.
He made a recovery in 18 whatever the fuck from being shot in the face.
He took a ball in the head and a ball in the neck.
Jesus.
And survived. Apparently, I think it was a shotgun blast or maybe a Derringer pistol, but guns were fucking wonky as shit back then.
The Mormons had their own Trail of Tears, and they walked all the way to Utah, and they cried it in that big lake.
In that big lake?
That's what happened.
It was all
right?
of Joseph's wives.
It was,
There was enough of them to supply the whole thing.
exactly.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
For anybody listening who might not have heard of your iconic voices, where can they find Cognitive Dissonance and everywhere else they can find you?
Well, you can find us at dissonancepod.com. We also do another show with the Puzzle and the Thunderstorm guys, the guys who do Scathing Atheists, God-Awful Movies, and the Skeptocrat. We do another show with them called Citation Needed, and you can find that at citationpod.com.
Great for history buffs and those just love history. You guys are experts on every single topic.
Every single topic.
amazing.
We read a Wikipedia article, and then we're experts for
And then
that
you
day.
improv from there.
And then, it's a lot of fun, though. It's a lot of fun. We read
great.
We read a
Great
Wikipedia article, and then we just joke around about it. It's a lot of fun.
It's really, I enjoy it quite a lot personally. Avid listener. So, guys, thank you so much once again, Tom and Cecil, for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
so much, Bryce.
All right, that's going to do it. Once again, thank you so much to Tom and Cecil. Really had a good time having them on. This episode was a little bit shorter and it was released earlier than usual, but we're going to resume our regular recording and release schedule on October 12th, and a regular show type. We'll catch up with all patrons and listener mail and everything. Then that's when I'm finally going to be able to get home and sit down and work together on putting together the next historical timeline episode. So we hope to see you there. For all of those supporters on patreon.com, we do our monthly Google Hangout that we call our Nemo Home Evening, and that usually comes on the first Monday of every month. Of course, it has been far too busy with me out at these conferences. I'm currently recording this from Minneapolis, and we are pushing out this month's Nemo Home Evening to Saturday, that is October 7th, where we have on special guests Ryan McKnight and Ethan Dodge of the Mormon Leaks Foundation. They are going to be talking about their recent dump before a conference, and we're going to be talking to Ethan, who recently came out behind his veneer of Privacy P. Pratt. So if you want to join us for that, be sure to sign up at patreon.com/nakedmormonism. That's patreon.com/nakedmormonism, where you get access to those monthly live hangouts, as well as a bunch of extra content and occasional episodes when they come out early. And of course, to all of the patron supporters, I will catch up with the newest ones when on the next episode. And thank you so much for supporting. And of course, thank you so much to Julie for running everything on the Twitter and Facebook handles. She really helps out a lot there and keeps the conversation going. Thank you so much, Julie. Also need to thank Craig Keeling for providing the artwork used in the show with his permission. Go to weirdmormonshit.com to see his blog there. Thank you to Jason Camo for providing the music used in the show with his permission. His music can be found at aloststateofmind.com, where you can download and listen to everything that he's made, and it's amazing music. Andrew Torres of the Law Offices of P. Andrew Torres, as well as the Opening Arguments podcast, provides the legal counsel for this show to keep us all on the up and up. Thank you so much, Andrew. And of course, last but very certainly not least, thank you so much to all of the wonderful listeners out there for lovingly listening to the loquacious musings of yours truly, and for once again lending me your ear. I hope to talk to you next time here on the Naked Mormonism Podcast. preceding podcast is a production of Ground Gnomes LLC, copyright 2017, all rights reserved.